Hey guys, welcome back to Inc. Today I have in conversation with me my friend Chi, who unfortunately was raped at the age of 12 and sex trafficked from the age of 13 to 19. Today I want her story to do the talking, so here it is.
All right, how's it going? Welcome to today's episode from Inc. We've all had one of those days where you feel like you don't matter, everything's going wrong, and no one is there to listen or relate. But here at Inc., you do matter, and here we can relate. Because for all of us, there's always a something, a one thing, or many things that can really affect the way we think and feel. We hope that today's conversation brings a little bit of hope to your day. And do make sure to stay connected by subscribing to the channel.
All right, Chi, how's it going? How are you doing today?
I'm really good, thank you, Nathan. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How is life in Germany treating you right now?
Yeah, it's all right. A little bit quiet. My husband is away out to sea, and even though lockdown restrictions have been lifted, it hasn't really massively changed for me. I'm waiting for the UK's quarantines to be lifted so that I can come back and visit friends and family and stuff.
Now,
So
did
yeah.
I hear? Now, I think my girlfriend Ellie was telling me, did you get stuck at the border here and have to go back?
No, so I didn't actually get stuck. I drove, so right at the beginning of lockdown, my
Yeah.
husband went on deployment, which was going to last 3 or 4 months. So I decided to drive all the way to the UK to spend lockdown in the UK. And then within a couple of days of arriving in the UK, my husband's deployment got cancelled. So I literally had to drive all the way back again.
Ah,
So yeah, and that was at the time where we weren't allowed to travel. So I had to have a story going to the UK, and then I had to have a story coming back from the UK on how to let myself back in. So it was interesting.
wow.
Yeah.
Well, I'm hoping to be able to travel to America in October, so I might be coming back to you to ask for some tips on smuggling myself across borders. But well, hey, I'm really excited about our conversation today. So let's just dive straight into it. And this is the first time I'm going to hear your story from yourself. I feel like I've heard so many amazing things about you, but I would just love for you to share your story and your journey of life over the past however many years, and just share your story with us today.
Yeah, definitely. So I had quite a normal childhood upbringing. At the age of 12, I played sport. So I played high level hockey, field hockey, for a lot of years. And by the age of 11, 12, I joined the adult team. So it was an adult women's team. And with that kind of came, being beyond my years, if that makes sense. Like there'll be parties, there'd be stuff going on at the clubhouse. And because I was in an adult team at a young age, I would be involved with stuff like that. And so at the age of 12, I was raped by an older man. And I would say that that was really the point where just everything started changing. I think for a young girl to go through something like that, not understand it, and then not really know how to process emotions, it just changed life for me. So there was a lot of guilt, there was a lot of blaming myself, and I chose, obviously stupidly now looking back, but I chose never to share that with anyone. And so I kind of just found myself in a world of seeking attention from the wrong kind of people, trying to fulfill this need that the rape had kind of, taken from me. Like there was stuff, identity issues, a lot of stuff that had been taken away from me. And so I tried to fill this need. And by the age of 13, I found myself in a world of sex trafficking. I got among the wrong guys. One particular guy, found myself being groomed. He would buy me a lot of presents, gifts. He would take me out for meals. He would just treat me like the queen, And I think the place that I was in life, I was like, wow, this is amazing. Like I'm part of his life. He cares about me. He loves me. So 13 years old, I found myself being sex trafficked. It was very subtle, from being groomed to then, running drugs for them, having a lot of money that, you know, they would give me, a lot of drugs that I would give to other people, you know, for exchange, I'd get money, which I would then give back. And there was one incident just after I got into all of this where cops started chasing me and I ditched the bag with a huge amount of money and drugs in it. And very quickly, this amazing relationship I had with this guy just turned. And he, you know, just turned overnight and he was like, you owe me this money now. This is what you need to do. And so I had to start modeling for him. That lasted a couple of times. And before long, I was having sex with men. And that was my way of, I guess, paying him back for what I owed him. Obviously, it's a massive story with a lot of details, and this is just, you know, snapshots of it. But yeah, I found myself from the age of 13 to 18, nearly 19 years old, in sex trafficking, sleeping with probably thousands of men. And then on top of that, there was a lot of videography stuff where we'd play out scenes. I had to do certain things and it would all be recorded. It was in a studio. It was all very professionally set up, and they would make videos and I guess sell them online and stuff like that. So it was pretty crazy. There was a drug bust when I was 18 going on 19 years old. And I was dropped off outside the front of my house, told never to tell anyone about anything. And it kind of just fizzled out. It finished. And looking back now, obviously it was a complete miracle that I got out of that world. It could have gone even more extreme. You know, I know a lot of girls, especially in my situation at that time, but, you know, they're sold on to different countries, different places. And I was incredibly fortunate to have walked out of it at that age. But yeah, it was 5, 6, how many years of that world and just being stuck in it.
Wow. It's, you know, I hear that and I'm like, or if I heard this story on a BBC documentary or on the news or on a Netflix documentary, I'd be like, oh, that's such a foreign thing. Like that's in a land far away. It's just not where I'm from, or it's just this foreign, far away, distant thing.
Yeah.
But you lived, where were you living at the time? That was a British problem, right?
Oh yeah. So that was in Oxfordshire.
Oxford.
Yeah.
I think that's the second most expensive place in the UK to live, and that's where you were living. So clearly not a foreign thing. And then when I think about geographically not being far away, and then I think about actually how accessible that life is to young guys and girls at the moment with the likes of OnlyFans. I know that I watched a documentary recently where a girl from Northamptonshire, not Oxfordshire, so right next door to Oxfordshire, is one of the top earners on OnlyFans. You know, a young girl, you know, basically selling her body online for men to look at. And then I think, gosh, like, it's just right there. It's accessible. Like, how did you go from being that 12-year-old girl, going through something traumatic, and then how did you meet that guy? How did you snowball into that world? Because I'd imagine for yourself back then, it'd probably be harder than how easy that could be today. Like, what were some of the steps that got you into that world, I suppose?
Yeah, so it kind of started out pretty innocently, you know, where like I would hang out with some older friends that I had in a pub. I would try out smoking. Before I knew it, I was trying out, you know, soft drugs. Before I knew it, you know, everything inside of me was rebelling. You know, and that was all from this one rape. Not that to take away anything from that, but this one incident snowballed everything else. You know, me into everything else. There was a house party in Oxford where I met this guy. And I think now looking back, it's so clear. You know, I think the biggest percentage of kids that are sex trafficked either come from a broken home, or they come from social services, or they come from, you know, if they're foster kids. And a lot of the time they're from broken lives. Now, I was from a normal family, but there was a lot going on within my family at the time. And I think this guy saw me as vulnerable. He saw me as very innocent. he saw me as someone that would pretty much do anything at the time because I had no self-value and there wasn't really a huge amount of, anyone checking on me in that sense. And so at this house party, I was trying out drugs. I was kind of, uh, just a character, I guess, that would draw attention to like, oh, actually, this is someone that we could prey on. This is someone that we could groom. And like you said, like it's worrying how close it is. I look at the youth today and the stuff they put on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok now, and it's worrying because that's where it starts. All it takes is a little video of, oh, look at me, with parents not checking what they're doing. And the next thing some guy is contacting them and they're messaging back and forth. And it's like, for this young girl, for example, this might be the greatest thing, but actually it's an older man grooming her, and I think that's how quickly it happens, and it's scary.
I listen to this. I'm not a dad. I can only imagine listening to a story like this if I had a daughter. But I think of, I help with it. Well, I run a youth group and I think of some of the young girls there and I'm just like, oh, please listen to this. And like, please put your value somewhere else. Please don't put your value in anybody's comments or what anybody can buy you, or put your value in something stronger and deeper than that. What would be your advice to like a young girl that's like scrolling TikTok, Instagram, and thinking about like, even just like putting stuff out there for likes is kind of the start of all of this, right? It's like that validation from someone else. What would be your advice to like a young girl that's just getting validation from that and then thinking of like OnlyFans or, just trying to impress people at parties, whatever it may be? What would be your advice to that young girl?
It's so tough because I feel like the stage that I was at when I was 12, 13 years old, people could have said stuff to me and I don't know if it would have massively registered. But I do know that obviously now, me in this body, in this position, there's so much I want to say to young girls, because I think now at the time, like a lot of young girls struggle with identity. Especially with all the social media out there, it's like, well, I'm not getting 1,000 likes, or this girl is my age, but she's really famous, And I think it's easy for young kids to go to the extreme to try and get those fans and those followers and those likes. And my advice really would be to kind of, rather than getting something in that instant moment, it's like looking at it long term. And I'd love to speak to them about my own experiences and say, right now, what you're feeling, like that is nothing compared to being forced to take drugs and forced to have sex with dirty, ugly old men day in, day out, and that's the path that they're on. If they're going to send those TikToks, if they're going to post those Instagram posts, they're putting themselves in an incredibly vulnerable position to men grooming them, to becoming a target of sex trafficking. And so, my advice would really be to every single thing that you're putting on is really look at who can see that. And, are you making yourself a target? Are you making yourself a victim potentially?
Yeah, so good. My hope is that just we can instill value, and just help young people understand that they are so valued, and actually a like or a comment or a DM from a guy or some girl or whatever just doesn't compare to the value that they actually have on their life, that they're precious and they're like so wonderfully made. And I just hope that, I don't even know what to say or where to begin. It seems like such a heavy thing, but I appreciate you sharing that. So then that's kind of like, if we look at, addressing and talking to young girls and guys that are thinking about that path. What about for the guys that were going to the brothels or were purchasing you? Sounds such a crazy thing to say. What about those guys? Or maybe that's an extreme. And as you said, you were taped and you were, they were put out wherever for sale. And obviously now we have websites where you can just log on, there's free content. What about guys that are, thinking of go into a brothel, or maybe that's an extreme, and maybe they're just going to log on to a porn website today, or even scroll TikTok and look at underage girls on TikTok.
Yeah.
What are some thoughts for a guy just on the brink of doing something like that today?
It's a hard one because it's a massive question, and it's funny because you say that it's an extreme, you know, for men going into brothels, but actually, I don't think it is. You know, when I met my husband and told him my story, he was like, "Oh, I thought that only happens in movies," you know. And he's in the Navy, the U.S. Navy, which, you know, there's a lot of guys when they go on deployments and they pull into foreign ports, like that's the thing that they go and do. You know, obviously not all, but there's definitely a percentage of them. And I know, you know, especially for men, like stag do's, you know, a massive thing that they go and do is you go to Amsterdam and you got to go and see the red light district. And so, as much as it might seem extreme, I don't think is as extreme as a lot of people think. And I think for all those guys, I know that when I shared my story with some of my husband's friends and they started knowing who I was, it massively changed their thought and idea on what brothels were. Because I think for a lot of men, you think a brothel, women are there, they're selling their body to make money, and that's their choice and that's their life decision. While I actually think that most women in brothels are either sex trafficked, they're either there against their will, they're being forced, they're being coerced, they're being told one thing, especially, you know, foreign girls that are promised a better life, come to the UK, come to Holland, come to wherever, America, like, will provide a better life. And, you know, before they know it, they're in a world of sex trafficking and they're doing all this stuff against their will. So I think for men looking at going to brothels, it's actually realizing that most women, one, are underage, and two, they're not there, you know, they're not there because they want to be there. You know, they're being forced to be there. A lot of them are on drugs. A lot of them have pimps. A lot of them, you know, all their appointments with customers are being set up and scheduled by pimps. And I really believe that if men started realizing that they're playing a huge part into the sex trafficking industry, like, it's going to change their views, you know, because if there wasn't a market, this wouldn't be a thing, you know. And there's a massive market, and mainly it's white men, you know, it's first world country men that are having issues in their marriage, or they're single and they, you know, or they aren't happy in their relationship, and actually, you know, they watch porn and they want to get the next best thing, so they walk into a brothel. And I think when I chatted to my husband's friends and they heard it like that, it really was like, whoa, you know, because if a girl's being held against her will in a brothel by their pimp, you know, the customers are then coming in and having sex technically against her will. I mean, you're looking at rape. And even though they don't realize they're raping a girl, you know, they're involved, you know, because if a girl doesn't want to have sex and she's under the influence, or she's under drugs and she's actually underage, which a lot of men don't realize any of these things, they, you know, their involvement is huge. And I think if men really started realizing that, you know, it's going to change the industry, because men are, you know, a lot of people I know want to be involved in that. It's just because they don't realize.
Yeah. You know, when I think of even in my own life, I was, you know, one football trip or one rugby trip away from participating. Like, you know, the guys would go away, you'd hear the stories when they come back, and it's like almost like lad culture. And it's like, actually, that lad culture that was banter and gives stories just ruined some young, potentially underage girl's life. What was the lasting impact on your life?
I mean, it was massive. You know, I walked out of this world at 18, 19 years old, and I was broken, you know, I completely broken. Like, I needed not just a couple of therapy sessions, like I was looking at, like, you know, 8, 9 years of therapy. You know, I went to a residential home for 5 months. That was full-time therapy. I then had another therapist after that for another 3, 4 years. I developed something called dissociation while I was being trafficked. And I mean, that's a whole nother thing, but that took years to rewire my brain so that I wasn't just dissociating and stuff like that, and just to be able to build up back to a point where I had a normal life, it was years. So not only did they take all those years when I was young, it was then however many years off the back of it. Just so much therapy. There was damage, within my body in terms of like the way it dealt with stress, adrenaline. There was too much of certain things in my body. So it's been a crazy journey, and I would say that I've been one of the incredibly fortunate ones that has walked out the other end. There are so many that you never see again. They get trafficked and you never find them again. And others that do get out of it, they just live the rest of their lives, in a state of brokenness and unsure of how to get from A to B. How do I get a normal life back? So yeah, it's been pretty crazy.
Yeah. What is something that, like, if there's a guy like myself or whatever watching this, listening to it, what's something I can do to help bring change to this?
Yeah, no, that's I think one massive thing is just it's awareness. Like, like you said, like it is happening, in the county that you live in. It is happening in the villages that you live in. It's awareness of just what's going on around you. Is there a house and there's men coming in and out and there's girls or whatever? It's opening your eyes to something that's bigger, where you might think, oh, that doesn't happen around me. Actually, it does. And I think if everyone had an awareness, brothels, safe houses, things like that, trafficking houses would start coming to an end, because, they're hard to hide, and they do their best. But if everyone really knew about it, it'd become a very different story. And I would also say, especially if it's focused on men, is porn. It's just, actually, it seems so innocent and so simple just to log in and watch a porn video. But really, what is it doing to your brain? Because I saw this awesome quote where it says pornography is a man's rehearsal for prostitution, and I love that, because actually that's where it starts. I think if a man is looking at porn, it's changing something in them, and it's getting expectations from women and from sex that isn't realistic. And when they then can't get it in their own relationship and in their own marriages, the next step is prostitution. And I think for any man that's looking at porn, one, realize that a lot of the girls in those porn videos are underage. The photography, underage girls, underage boys. It's amazing how you apply a bunch of makeup and certain camera angles can make a girl look a lot older than they actually are. And so I think, the next time you want to go to that porn site is realize, one, you're putting money into the business. If there was no one looking at porn, there'd be no market for it, and so that's a massive one. And two is just realizing that most women that you're watching, like, they're not there because they want to be there. And even the minority that are getting paid and that have chosen to do that, they're desperate. Their lives are desperate. They don't want to be doing that because that's their passion in life. They're doing it because out of complete desperation. So specifically for men, like, it starts with porn. Look at what you're doing. Look at what you're putting your money into. Look at what you're supporting.
Yeah, I think if I consider my one view on a porn video is like one going to a brothel one time, that one view is still contributing to the production of pedophilia, rape, all these negatives that come from the sex industry. I think we need to seriously consider that the one view that I'm adding to a tally on a porn website has a drastic impact on, a young person's life, like yourself and your story. So
yeah,
so good. Any last thoughts for like a young girl right now scrolling TikTok and Instagram and just thinking about a life on OnlyFans or something like that? Any kind of lasting thoughts for that person?
Just, I guess, any youngsters that are watching this, just be so careful. I want to write a book, and as part of that, I've been reading a lot of books on other people's stories, and it's incredible how so many young kids end up in the world of sex trafficking because they made themselves a target on social media. I think today's day and age, that's where it starts for a lot of them. And so, if you're watching this, it's what are you posting? Who's got access to it? And if you do get messages, like don't keep it to yourself. Share it with an adult, because if it's legit and it's a boy that's nice and your age, then there's nothing wrong with an adult knowing about it. So I think if you're getting any messages or you're getting anything that's like, hold on a minute, like, this guy's messaging me, he's saying one thing, but just share it with an adult, and I think especially for parents out there, know what your kids are doing on social media. You're their parents, have full access. They don't need that privacy until they're older, so have full access, know what they're watching, know what they're looking at, and know what they're posting, because, potentially you're saving another young girl from, being sex trafficked.
Yeah. Gee, so good. Thank you so much for opening up and sharing your story. And it's great to hear it. And I really hope that it has impact on the people watching this. So thank you so much.
No worries. Thank you.
Cool. Have a good day.
You too.
I recently saw a post on my Instagram that glorified OnlyFans and young girls signing up to earn money from it. But I think you'll see from today's conversation that prostitution in the flesh or online will only lead to pain in later life. If you're a young person watching this, where do you get your value from? What adds value to your life? It has to be more than likes on Instagram and TikTok fame. Men, let's not be part of the problem. Our one view on a porn website is keeping demand for an industry that is rife with rape and pedophilia. Let's not be part of this problem. I get it. I'm a man too. I have urges as well. But surely we can put our urges to one side, stand up and speak out against injustice within the sex industry.
Hi, you still watching? You must have something better to do by now. Seriously though, thanks so much for watching today's episode from Inc. Remember, we all have those days where you feel like you don't matter, everything's going wrong, and no one is there to listen or relate. But here at Inc., you do matter. Remember, here you're included in something. You're part of a community where you are included. We want to inspire your future and bring a little bit of hope to your day. And before we wrap up, please do subscribe and stay connected to Inc. so we can continue to give you content that delivers a little bit of hope. See ya.